This is the Business Stuff Podcast. This is where I will share the lessons I've learned from advising thousands of businesses over almost 30 years. Each episode will give you practical insight to allow you to learn from other people's mistakes. I'll be pulling in experts from our team and the world of business, and together we'll make sure your business is giving you what you want. My name is Martin, and this is the Business Stuff Podcast.
Hello, it is Jack here from the Accelerator team, and we're back for another episode of Business Stuff Podcast. I'm joined by Brad Shannon.
Howdy.
Nice to see you.
I see you too.
Good. It's a weird one. We've known each other for quite a few years, haven't we?
It's been virtually we've known each other for 6-7 years. I think you did an R&D return.
Yes, for one of our clients back in the day. And it's not as if people will be listening to your accent and go, oh, because he's probably on the other side of the world. But actually, no, you moved to Newcastle like three years ago, was it?
I did, about 3. Good enough.
Yeah, and we still haven't seen the chip.
No, we still haven't. Yeah,
but it's very nice to have you.
Cheers, mate.
It was we were originally going to speak on the podcast about raising finance because that's kind of where your expertise, kind of in the finance sector, are, but also. Off camera, we started talking about R&D. People that listen know that it's my passion area. So it's definitely worth kind of getting your experiences through that because they are kind of linked together. Kind of this concept of raising funds, and what we mean by that is sort of like through investment.
Well, 100%, they're hugely linked together. But I think also depending on the size of the companies listening to this, it's going to be dependent upon one another in some sense if they're going to scale and grow, because I think as we were saying before this, it doesn't take much to divert your attention. It's great. I love it. R&D, what's talk R&D? But I think one of the things is, the money that was available originally to companies that would be, emerging R&D and tech companies, I think that money's not going to be there anymore. That used to be there, that is completely reliant. So I think there's going to be a lot of cash-strapped companies coming up in the next, especially in the next financial year. Yeah,
so because the logic behind it is the R&D essentially subsidises some of these smaller startup companies with tax rebates and tax credits so that they can go, excellent, well, I appreciate you're not making any money right now, you're developing something that could potentially be massive, so here's some money back from you. Yeah. But there have been changes, as you've kind of alluded to, in the UK government's attitudes towards R&D. They're putting more emphasis on the large companies and less benefit for the smaller companies, which you pointed out something which I hadn't even thought about before in terms of, you absolutely spot on that idea, the statistics that the UK government put on that are completely misguided, aren't they?
I think they're hugely misguided. I think large companies are terrible at making tech. When a company gets so, I was just saying to you previously, the company I'm with now, I currently work for a tech company, and we're an early stage scale up company, somewhere around the £3 to £5 million sort of turnover mark, and forecasted about 10 million next year. So we're in that scale up stage where we're still loss making, but we're on the border, nearly breaking even. So for people like us, yes, that R&D money is really nice and really helpful, but at the same time, it's not a lifeline critical. We've got good, we've got millions in the bank. We're comfortable, but if you rewinded 6 months ago or a year ago from where we are today, that money would be a lot more important. And we've been at this for 12, 13 years. So I've spent a lot of my sort of career working in early stage tech companies and that sort of startup from that idea phase to bringing it up and all the rest. But anyway, with this current role, the one thing that we've learned is large tech companies that we sell to in particular aren't the best at making new technology. In terms of innovation, they're too big an outfit, too many moving cogs to be able to develop or to make the widget that they're trying to make. So it's much easier for them to outsource to companies like ours at the moment to build those little bits to see if they work or they don't work, and if they do, then they can acquire a company like us. The problem, at the moment the government wants to do that. They like supporting enterprise companies because, just for the people listening who might not get R&D, if a company is profitable, it's a tax offset, so it's less taxation income that will come in. However, if it's a loss-making company, so they're not paying tax, you get that as cash. Now that's the problem, because It's not offsetting the potential income. They're actually giving us money that we didn't have to make that tech. And that's where the problem lies. Where these companies, these small companies and these startups are where the innovation and where the ideas actually come from. This is where the emerging tech comes from. Every single, ChatGPT started in someone's basement once. Yeah. It's that basic. Now, those companies, 80-90% of their income come from their R&D returns. Angel investors make high-risk investments in these companies, but do so knowing that an R&D return will come back. Most of these companies that I've worked for or consulted for or was an FD for, that's our lifeline. It's bread and butter money, that. Mm-hmm. And if we didn't get that R&D money, these companies would have been bust a long time ago.
Totally, yeah.
And this is my biggest worry, is the government haven't thought through that if we are not supporting those early stage companies anymore, which what this taking this money away does, they're not going to ever come to fruition. And you got to remember, it's not just about being a profitable company that proves that tech is a success. Quite often these companies are acquired by bigger companies before they are profitable. So they're loss-making, they're venture-led, they're relying on investors to put money in. Mm-hmm. So if I was a VC and wanting to scale one of these, if I'm not getting that R&D money coming through, I'll be a lot less reluctant to spend that money. And as a CFO, I would know now that my cash is more scarce and not want to spend it, which means it's slowing down the amount of R&D I'm making to try to get my product to market and to make it commercial. So it's not going to do the world of good for innovation in the UK.
Totally, because if you look at the product life cycle, as you said, those smaller businesses will be ploughing a lot of money into their research and development, developing a product. It may get to 75% there, get acquired by a large company, a Google, for example. Yep. They will then finish off that R&D stuff. But then in terms of, if you look at the stats, when HMRC or the UK government look at it, they'll go, well, at this stage, this SME we were giving them money, as you said, and what do they generate? Well, they disappear off the map, but they don't actually factor in the fact that they were acquired by Google. But then they look at Google and go, well, this technology that they bought from an SME 3 years ago now suddenly is actually a product which they're marketing and it's contributing to their bottom line.
And they will also be investing in the R&D of that product.
Yeah. So they'll go, well, that's
to make
good
it better
R&D.
and better and better.
Yeah.
And they'll say, that's what we want in this country, and that's great, and that's fine. But the problem is you've lost the sight that that started 3 years ago in someone's back garage. If you take away that, they're taking away 2/3 of that money. You take that away, that's
because
trouble.
The large companies don't necessarily have the time and patience to do all of that early development work.
And do you want the large companies to be responsible for making all of our technology?
Absolutely not.
No, because they're only going to hire a certain amount of people. Do you want them to be the only employers of innovation? No, you need your startups. I mean, 85% of the businesses in this country are SMEs.
Yeah.
You need your startups, you need your scale-ups and your small businesses to be able to produce that technology and have the agility. A good example, right? We've made a product at the moment that we've just launched to market. That's cost us quite a bit of money to get it to this stage. And we've done a lot, we did all the research, it's a brand new vertical for us, so it's a new sector. We put all this effort in, we've launched this product, and it's great, but it works. But instantly we get feedback going, you know what, if it did A, B, and C, that'll be even better. So then we go away, and now we invest our dev time and our R&D time to create A, B, and C to increase the value of that product. Now that's R&D spend. And that's making that piece of technology usable for that sector. Yeah. And that's going to go on back and forth. There's no dream scenario that anyone just says, it's lovely theoretically that yes, someone built a product and boom, it's ready and there you go, thank you very much, be bought. It doesn't work like that. You get back and forth, things change, the market changes, tech changes. It's going to be always up to date, and then hopefully you may be acquired. But the truth is there's a huge amount of R&D that's got to go to get it to that point.
Yeah.
And
it's never finished really, is it?
No, never. And it was, what was I watching? Some painful kids TV show the other day, because I have 2 young kids and that's my life now, it's watching kids TV shows. Was it Odd? Anyway, Odd Squad, one of these. Anyway, it was talking about failure and science. And there was a good point that came on there, and that, it was also an Abbott Elementary as well the other day. But it was a good point about science is failure. And you got to remember tech, and emerging tech and new technology and R&D, the stuff that we're meant to be making for these R&D returns, is about failure. Is 9 times out of 10 it doesn't work what we do, and we've got to go and do it again, or try something different, or try a new way to make it work. That costs money and that takes time. And only the small businesses are agile enough to be able to do that, the startups. Because they spend most of the time unpaid doing it in their back garage for nothing. Because they do it, founders do it for passion of love. But they do need teams to support them. So, and I think that, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, like, when's the last time that you gave that Google? When could you feed meaningfully back to Google on their product? And how would that fall on deaf ears? Probably.
Well, yeah. I mean, I can't talk about Google, one of our clients, so I can't talk individually about large tech companies now because I might get in trouble. They're wonderful people to work with. No, but they really are. But yeah, no, it's the large organisations. I mean, and the way that even the companies that are structured, that you have a development squad that just works with travel, a development squad that would just work with advertising. You don't have. It's not like a small company where you have a development squad. And then you look at the best one to go into. I mean, because it is so large, just the nature of it has to be broken down into different elements. So it makes it very difficult to be able to pinpoint new tech where it needs to be.
Yeah.
I think the biggest, looking at the fact that they're not going to change their mind probably on this, I think the biggest, where it comes into funding is going to be on 2 strands. One, where can businesses or earlier stage companies that are looking to start, because I don't think the fallout of this is going to really hit for another 5 years, because you got to remember that it's a long supply chain. So already it's the companies that aren't going to be starting tomorrow is where it's going to hit, and we're not going to feel that for another 3 years in the market, 3 to 5 years in the market. So but where the companies, what can we do? What can a person wanting to start a business now that's not going to get that R&D money, where they're going to get their money from? So that's one question.
Yep.
And the other question is, with the market the way it is today, and the huge percentage of funding for some of your clients potentially, especially the one size of the companies we work together on, that R&D refund was a massive amount of their cash flow. So they're going to have to either raise more money somehow, access more money, or work out what to do. Yeah. So that's the second question is, what do we do? Shit, we're out of money. What now? So I think, for me, they're the 2 main sort of elements when it comes to tying it in.
No, you're so right, because the innovation curve, the innovation curve is something that, it will eventually come to an end when people cotton on and go, oh, actually, what's the point in doing this? There's no potential upside to this.
Or we'll go to another country that does it.
Yeah.
We'll go to America. America's got good R&D returns. We'll go to Australia. It's terrible. We won't go to Australia. But, EU, go to Europe, go to Croatia.
That would be the irony of the whole thing, is that then all of this innovation goes to the EU.
What was that wonderful thing Spain did? Was it Mallorca or Spain, where you can, I don't know if you remember this, it was in lockdown, move your business over there and you got tax-free for a period of time.
I did not see that, no.
Oh my God, it's amazing. A mate of mine did it. A couple of friends of mine did it. You can move your business over there and make that your registered address, move your entity over, and you got like some sort of tax allowance free, was better, but you could live in Mallorca for lockdown. It was a way of boosting the economy post-COVID.
Yeah, I mean...
Mate,
not a bad place.
Tell you what, if I was single and and had a small little business, didn't have 2 kids, it would be a thought process. But it's but in regards to those 2 questions, I think companies now that are really clients of yours now that are incredibly reliant on that money and won't be getting it in. I think budgeting and forecasting, obviously, really important. Make sure.
Bit of a buzzword on this podcast.
Yeah,
cash flow.
Cash flow is cash is king, and my favorite statement, my favorite lines. Bank account statements don't lie. People lie. They don't mean to lie, but bank account statements don't. Right? It tells you exactly what's coming in, what's coming out.
Yeah.
Everything else is bullshit. It's the only truth. And really being on, using that as your starting point to your budget. Get your bank statements the last 2 years, do your cash flow on that, and then really being honest with yourself on what you think you're going to get in sales. and then working out what you're going to do and how long your runway is before you go bust. And if you haven't got that runway before you go bust, and you haven't got any sales coming in, accessing finance and how you're going to access it, I think is the big thing. And there's a couple of things that people can think about. I mean, one thing that you could look at things like, look at commercial, so a good example, and it's public knowledge, so I don't mind sharing. So UBIO, who I'm with now, tech company, as I said, similar situation, raising money. They did something really clever. Instead of going out to the market and arranging more money from, angel investors, they went to a corporate, to a commercial company that could really benefit from our technology, that invested in us for a completely different reason, and that was large enough to become a large client. And that's smart money. What do you do? What does your tech do? Have you got a piece of tech that's ready for market? Who is it going to help? Is there a large company that your tech will make lots of money for, or could make lots of money for, or be really strategically important? Are they a potential future buyer for your business? Then they could get in the ground, then get on the floor now and buy you, or percentage of you, let's say, for 10 million, 5 million, 2 million, whatever, for whatever you think your valuation is. But it's a completely different investment. It's not because they need an exit, it's because they need your tech to be able to make money. And that's a completely different type of raising money. That is a really clever way, because what you're doing is boosting the valuation of your company, because obviously you can boost it up because they're making commercial money out of you, not looking for the financial return. But more importantly, you've got a sale, potentially. Obviously, that person is going to want to buy your services from you. They're not going to get it for free. They're going to have to pay for your product, your services, or whatever you're selling. Normal rates, if not more. So you've picked up a client, and you've picked up an investor, and you've picked up a potential future exit strategy.
That's
gold,
really,
gold.
Really interesting. I mean, that's even something you can extrapolate outside of the tech industry. It's like looking up your supply chain, and going like, well, is there a potential investor in there to help me grow my business? Is there?
And that's, people don't. I mean, there's cons. I mean, obviously, there's cons to it, because, but I think there's a way more pros to cons. I think people get scared. I think I often suggest this. This is a method to people, and the feedback I get is how do I do that? And there's a fear of putting oneself out there to make it happen, or how do I meet these people? It's called LinkedIn. It's a wonderful tool. Just use it. Stalk them, send them messages, harass them, find their email, get your inner salesman out. I always say my old thing is, sales is just solving someone's problem. So if you really believe that your software or your business is actually going to solve the problem for that person you're trying to raise that money from, or that commercial entity, you're actually doing them the favor. So you're actually helping them do their job. It's just making sure you find that right person. Look at go for the CEO, go for the CFO, look at Chief Investment Officer, look at the Chief Product Officer. Try bloody everyone, it doesn't matter. You'll get a bite if they're interested. And what's their objective? Know what your tech will do to help their company. So that's one type that I would definitely recommend to everyone as a first step. Your existing investors, of course, if you have any, is a good first step as well. I think your goal as a company at that point needs to be how to make yourself break even as possible and go to market and get to market, capture some part of the market if you haven't already.
Because that's obviously the benefit of your investor as well, because they want to know, well, how quickly am I going to get my money back?
100%. People always forget that if you raise money from equity, the people that are investing in you only make money when you sell your company. People always forget that. People always think, oh, no, it's great, they're buying a value in their portfolio. They don't give a shit about that. What they care about is exit. When are you going to exit, and how much money am I going to make, and how much of a risk of you are you? How long can you stay in business for? So,
because I'm not getting any dividends anytime soon.
And you don't want them to give you dividends, because that takes more cash out of the cash flow. So, the only way they'll make their money back is when you sell the company. And if you haven't got a business that's going to sell, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, people always think that they need to build some company that's going to exit for squillions. It's not about that. Then it's debt. And there's nothing wrong with debt either. There is good debt out there, and there is debt out there because banks need to lend money to make money. So I always say, oh God, I keep saying this. I always say when I was young. No, but it's the same thing. If banks don't lend money, they don't make money. It's our job to get companies in a position, and company owners' responsibility to get their company in a position where a bank can lend them money.
Yes.
People always say that, oh, well, this is, banks don't lend money. Investors aren't investing at the moment. Bullshit, they are. They always are. Otherwise, they're not going to make money. It's just that
you're not painting the right picture for them.
Exactly. What's their objective? What do they need to know? And also, is it the right type of finance? It's amazing the amount of manufacturing companies I meet, and they haven't done asset finance. And they're like,
didn't know that was an option.
Yeah. What's asset finance?
Yeah.
Well, that £5 million worth of machines you got downstairs. Yeah, we can borrow money against those. Serious? Yeah.
Oh wow.
Okay. Yeah. So, and it's like, the other common one is, I don't want debt. Why not? Because I have to personally guarantee it. Yes. But I don't want to put things at risk. And it's like, but you're asking the bank to put it at risk. Oh, but it's different. And I always remember my first business partner said to me, and there was an element of truth, and I'll share that at the end because I think it's an embarrassing story, but I think we all learn from our mistakes. But he used to always say to me, a bank's job is not to take your house. A bank just don't like taking properties. What do you mean? He goes, well, if you PG something and the bank takes your house, they don't want to take your house because it's a pain in the ass. They're going to sell it. They don't want to sell it. They're not going to get much money for it. They just fire sale it. All they want to do is recover some of their money. Also, if you did a payment plan with them and offer them anything to pay it back per month, there's not a judge in the country that would then tell them they can take your house, because you've made a positive step to acknowledging the debt, to agreeing to pay back the debt, and it's just not in their interest to want to do that. And at the time, it was my first startup, and I was a bit naive, so I was like, oh, whatever. But anyway, I signed it anyway, and it was an overdraft facility to our first business account, and money was racked up on this overdraft facility. And the company didn't work out and all the rest of it. And my business partner had agreed he was a lot more wealthy than I, had two parts of nothing, and he had money. So he agreed to make back the repayments. But then, of course, what happened, the bank comes knocking on the door and says, we'll like our 40 grand back. And I'm like, duh. And the fear hits you. And he was dead right though. He said, okay, fine, I'll pay you back £50 a month, that's all I can afford. The bank's like, oh, okay. I think I've been paying it off for the last 15 years. I think we might have finally got towards the end of it now. Now, he had quite a lot of money in the bank. He could have paid it back, but he didn't want to. He just said, £50 a month. Didn't he go against our credit ratings? There's no black mark against my name. There's none of that, because we agreed to pay everything back, and we did.
Yeah.
And not a judge in this country would have said, yeah, you can take his house for 40 grand. If we agreed to pay it back at the amount that he said he could afford, but it doesn't matter. It was agreed to pay back. So it's, people shouldn't be scared of debt. It's not that as scary as it sounds.
No, it's true, and I do have a lot of conversations with clients around this idea of debt, and they're very, generally because they see debt in a very specific way. They either see it as a loan, or they've been told stuff like invoice financing's the devil, and once you get into it, it's like heroin and you can never get off it.
It's very well.
When in reality, there's also an element of judgment behind it as well, because
there is.
When it's certainly like the old-fashioned systems, you can understand that because it went into a separate bank account. They're like, well, why is it invoiced?
And they had to pay from a different company, and it looks bad on you as a company.
It looks like, you're not in control of your finances.
Factoring, I think it was called.
Yeah, exactly. But now there are new products on the market which make it more flexible.
Yep. Hugely. And also be careful who you go with, because I won't name companies, of course, but there's some suppliers out there that are incredibly expensive. And I always say there are some lenders out there. I did some broking once, many years ago, and I had to stop because I had an ethical dilemma with it. As an accountant, my responsibility is to my clients and to make sure that I'm looking after their businesses and them. That's my responsibility. As a broker, your lenders like Iwaka will pay you a 10% broker's fee based on the, what they will make on that lifetime of that loan. NatWest, and they will charge the client, 10-15% interest, right? NatWest will charge a client 4% interest back in the day.
I'd say,
but they pay
can I get hold of for
exactly.
that?
But as a broker for NatWest, they would only pay me 1.06% commission. Now, if my job was a professional broker, am I going to take 1.06% of that 4% interest, which is not going to make me very much money at all? Or am I going to go down the route and want to take my 10% of my 15% interest?
Yeah.
It makes, if my professional job was a broker, you would always want to sell the most expensive product. Invoice financing, very similar game. There's invoice financing people out there that'll pay large fees to people for introductions, but charge to the roof. And then you've got some of your other ones or your banks that may charge less. And I always say to clients, don't be scared about going to your bank that you bank with now and talking to them about this. And this is another point that I think a lot of SMEs don't think about. The issues with challenger banks and digital banks is debt is very, very important. Digital banks don't lend money. It's that simple.
Yeah.
And banks lend money to companies that have relationships with them that they feel that they can trust and aren't high risk. If you have to move all your accounts over to a bank to be your customer, you're not going to be as a preferred person to lend money to, unless you've got lots of money in the bank, rather than someone that's been with them for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And people don't think about that. And they think, oh, digital bank's sexy. I'm going to go with Starling and, get my free online account to Wise or one of these mobs. But they don't lend money.
And so when the proverbial hits the fan.
Yeah. Or you want to scale. I mean, what's that thing they teach us at accounting school? Debt is cheaper than equity. And it's really true. So if you're a company that, let's say, is doing really well, you've got really good turnover, you're not even necessarily profitable, but you're scaling, right? And you want to get to that next stage. I'm happy to share, but UBIO is in that great position now, right? We don't need to raise equity. We don't want to sell equity right now. If I had to raise money, and the market was a bit different probably than it is now, but I would go for debt because I could borrow money. I know exactly how I would use that money to scale the company faster or quicker into different areas because we've learned. And I know that we could pay back that interest. And the idea is by borrowing that money, I'm going to be able to increase the valuation of the company because I'm going to increase our sales and make our company much larger than it is. And I haven't sold any equity.
Yeah.
So now that our equity is worth so much more for borrowing that small chunk of money that we could easily afford to pay back. So it's
and an SME probably has even more. They have even less equity to play with as well. So it's not as if
hugely
you can only sell 49% of your business once.
But if you're an owner-managed business, what are you selling if you're selling equity? Like I FD'd for a number of owner-managed businesses, and I always come in because they say, we want to raise money, or I want to sell the company, or I want to raise equity. And you're like, you can't, you're owner-managed. And then I spend most of my time trying to teach them the business is all about you. It's all about you. It's not about, if you die, the business is screwed. There is no legacy plan. There's no one else. People buy from you because they like you. There's nothing to sell.
Exactly, yeah.
You need debt. Debt is how you're going to grow.
Or come up with a credible way of getting yourself out of the business.
Or management buyout.
Exactly.
And hand over to your staff in the future years. Or if it's an accounting practice, sell your clients to the next person. But again, it's still not going to have that impact. Be a cash cow. Take the money out, grow it, and close it when you're old, won't they? But there's that. Every business is different. But yeah, I mean, I think the big thing, to circle back, is not to panic. Startups, I think, is the biggest worry. Is what a startup does. What does somebody do now that wants to start a tech company. And to be honest, I think 9 out of 10 of them haven't thought about R&D anyway as a source of income in terms of scaling, but in terms of actually paying the bills. But I think what will have to happen is that the founders are going to have to do a lot more work themselves. It's going to take longer to build your product, and you're going to have to spend more money on outsourcing to foreign countries.
Yeah, because you're not going to have the luxury of bringing in in-house development teams. It's going to have to be
definitely
yourself,
not.
Or
this is what I laugh about. Sunak saying, he wants to be the innovation capital of the world, but you've just taken away all the innovation money. Yeah, you want to be the innovation capital of the world. It is now cheaper for me to outsource to foreign countries to build my technology than build it in-house, or to build it in the UK. I may as well outsource it to Romania, or it used to be Ukraine, but that's not cheap anymore. And obviously, since the war, it's not been a desirable place. But I may as well outsource to different countries. Why do it here? What's the point?
I suppose the UK government will be laughing then, so they don't have to pay R&D on it, because they're like, oh, well.
And they don't, but they're not going to make the money from the tax either, from the wages or the national insurance. So, the PAYE. And you would eventually, if you're a tech company, ask yourself the question of, why am I here? Higher corporation tax, what's the point? I might as well go to Ireland.
Totally, yeah.
Ireland's got great tech, it's got great developers, it's in the EU, you get EU funding, it's more comfortable, you're going to be sitting around your Facebooks and your Bulldog games, what would you do? Anyway. It's sad, but it's true though. I'd love to be proved wrong, but it is a worry.
I suppose the last question I had for you then is, you kind of talked about your role is to kind of get people in a position where they are people willing to invest in them, or they're willing to borrow for them. So what tips would you give business owners out there about what they can do in terms of being ready for that investment, being investment ready, being
for sure
ready to scale up?
Yeah, I think there's two parts to that question. I think one part is getting investment ready. I think the second part is finding the right investor as well. I think that's so important. People don't take that for granted. But getting investment ready, building. I know founders hate doing this, but it's true. But a lot of people like to outsource business models or forecasts, especially, right? Because an investor wants to see your forecast for the next 3 years ahead. I think it's really, really important. And remembering with a lovely, wonderful accounting company right now that will help you do your forecasts, I'm sure. But you have to work. They have to work with you on them.
Totally.
Yeah, I've seen enough examples in my career of getting a set of forecasts, and then I'm like, so why do your sales double in month 3? Oh, the accountant said it looked good. It's like, that's not an answer.
No,
it's working with your accountant to be able. You can only build something based on the information that your client gives you. If your client is not going to feed you the information that you need, you can't do it. And that is the reality.
I think that shocks a lot of our clients where we have done forecasting, and I'll sit with them, we'll have an initial meeting, agree a price, and it's like, right, okay, when can I get it by? It's just like, well, you need to come in. Like, well, what do you mean? I've already told you everything. It's like, no, that was a brief outline. A 3-way forecast, profit and loss, balance sheet, cash flow. We need to sit down and we need to talk about these things. We need to talk about, get into the detail of it. And they're kind of like, oh, right, okay.
And people always forget that every action has a reaction, right? This is what I always talk about with modeling. Is you told me in month 3, you're going to double your sales, but I can see you haven't increased your marketing spend. So how are you going to double your sales in month 3? Oh, the marketing from the last 3 months will take effect. Bullshit. Sorry, I call bullshit. Like, that's not how it works. I said,
I'm planning on bumping into Bill Gates in the lobby.
Exactly. Can you tell me who that customer would be? Oh no, because we haven't built it. It's all theoretical. And of course it's theoretical. Yes, it's pulling it out of the sun. But every action still has a reaction. If you told me that you're going to grow to a 1.5 million turnover in your first year, who am I to say that's wrong? But you need to tell me how.
Yeah.
And also, I'm looking at your salaries, they haven't increased. Well, we're going to do it all on ourselves. Again, I call bullshit. You can't, because your product's going to be under stress. It's never been under stress before. You're going to need to have more tech developers. You haven't increased your budget for tech developers. Oh, well, great. Well, we need to increase that.
Yeah.
Your staffing needs to increase. You need sales staff. They need to be paid commissions. Where's your commission payments? Oh, you know, but also, how much are you going to pay them? Oh, 30 grand a year. Well, who the hell are you going to have selling your products? You know, you need You need about 150 a year. What? I can't. So great. Why this is all important is good investors, and I say it like that because I do think they are, but look at your numbers. Your numbers should tell the story. Your business plan or your investment deck or whatever the hell you want to call it should be a narrated version of your financial model. That's how I always say, and I always do it, right? And that means if you tell me in your business plan that the way that you're going to scale your business is through channel sales of A, B, and C, well, I want to see that in your model. And if you're saying that you're going to get the student market and you're going to do it through blah, 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 great. I want to see that in your marketing spend on how you're going to do that.
Yeah.
And the experienced entrepreneur would know that. And if I was an investor, they're the things I'm going to be looking for. And if you don't have those things, I think it makes it not impossible to raise money, but a much, much harder sell. And while it's important, and yes, I can hear people saying already, that's BS, so I've raised money already, it doesn't matter, I didn't put that much thought into it and we raised money. Yeah, great. And what happened? You didn't have enough money, did you?
Yeah.
No. Yeah. And then what happened? You had to go back and raise money again.
Yeah.
That's the problem. You're not, if you don't do it properly in the first place, you're not going to know how much money you need to actually build your product because you haven't thought about it. And the truth is, that plan's going to go to pot anyway, all right?
Yeah.
That is the truth, all right? So, but it doesn't matter if you actually think it through, at least you're going to over-exaggerate how much you may potentially need to do it, and you got that money to pivot. The reason why at UBIO, I don't mind sharing, we're in a comfortable position, is because we have extra money in the bank. I've never been, as I was saying to you before we started, first startup in my life I've ever been in that position, which is wonderful, because I haven't had to spend the next 6 months fundraising.
Yeah.
Now, every time I've been in a startup, I spend 90% of my time raising money. That means there's 90% of my time not focusing on how to grow the company. And if I was a founder, you need to be growing and scaling your business, not focusing on how you're going to raise your next round of investment because you've run out because you didn't ask for enough money.
Yeah.
So,
is there an element of it kind of it being glamorized, the idea of getting money in terms of selling an idea?
selling a dream.
Selling a dream, yeah. And there's like social networking. Is that how it works?
Yes and no. I mean, yeah, selling a dream is really important, and you know, the founder's job, the CEO's job is to sell a dream, especially in an early stage investment company, because we can't do it yet. We are selling something that doesn't exist. All dreams need an element of reality,
yeah,
to make it happen. And that brings me to that next point about the right investor, because that's the other thing I think that lots of early stage companies don't take into consideration. I've worked or contracted for enough startups now to see what happens when you don't have the right person, or you've got investment from someone that you've missold to. And this is the other thing about getting ready for investment that's so important. You need to make sure that you believe in what you've written.
That authenticity.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you've had this before, that you've helped someone make a model, you've given them their forecasts, they've gone out to market, they've raised a couple of million, they've come back, and then you sit there in a board meeting or whatever, or going through the end of month accounts with the board members, and there is an internal fight because, according to that board member who's the investor, is sitting there going, you haven't done what you said you're going to do. And they're like, oh no, well, we're actually going to do X now.
Yeah.
And that happens all the time. And people think, oh, but I've got the money, it doesn't matter. But that's bullshit, because the problem is investor X is not going to invest in you because they think, they can't trust you. And then you've got so that's going to be a major issue. And then you're going to have, if you don't have an existing investor reinvest, it looks really bad. So if I was a new investor coming in a Series B or something, I'd be like, why are none of your original investors putting money in?
Yeah.
Oh, they didn't believe in how we're going to scale the company. It's like, well, what did you sell? Show me your first deck that you sent them. Why did you send it? Is that what you've always wanted to do? And the truth is, yeah, it is. If that's what you want to do, and if that's what you really believe that you're going to do, then find the investor that believes in that dream. Don't just take the first money that comes along because you're desperate. And that's the worry. And we do that. We're humans. I mean, it's a natural knee jerk, but you've got to find the right people. And you've got to find people you like, people you want to work with. Remember, your investors are actually your co-workers. I mean, there's plenty of times I've worked with some larger VCs especially where they are not on my Christmas card list. They're not nice people.
We're not going to ask you to name and shame.
No, I won't, because I'll probably want to get money out of them again one day.
Yeah.
But the thing is, they got a job to do, I understand, but there's a way of doing it. And of course, I play the character and I do all the right things. But if I had a cracker of a business that I wanted to raise money for, that I know these guys are continually looking for deals on, I'm not going to go to them because I'm going to have to work with them every day. I'm going to go to the other guy that I really liked because he was a top bloke or top lady, the top. I keep saying bloke, I shouldn't say that, but a top person that I really enjoyed working with. I'll go to them first, and they can say no or yes.
Just how you pick your employees, as I said, it's the person you're
100%.
And you pick the first thing that goes through the door.
Look, as an early stage company, you need to trust their advice as well and their experience. And we've got an awesome angel at UBIO that we're very close to, and he's been chair and he's all sorts, and he's an incredibly knowledgeable person at scaling companies of this size. He's great. He's a go-to guy for advice, and it's so important. And also, second of all, your investor, the best investor you can get as early stage, I call you little black book investor, right? Smart money. It's investor from somebody who's actually going to bring you clients. And again, I'm sure UBIO won't mind me using them as an example, but we've got some investors that came along with several clients because they want to see their investments do well. And they can bring new business to the table. That's great, man.
Yeah, that's a scenario where the person who's the investment can be disappointed because they're, again, sold a dream. Yeah. And they may have 3 or 4 different, like the classic Dragon's Den scenario where you've got 3 or 4 different people vying for your business, and you're told, you're sold the dream of, yes, I can get this to this stage because I've got the contacts, but then these contacts never appear.
It always makes me laugh because when you have money as a company, and when you're growing and you're scaling, investors come to you. It's great. When you got nothing, you're desperate and you keep banging on. You have to knock on a lot of doors to raise money, But it's and it's a thankless task. But it's a task that needs to be done. But yeah, right money, right investors. That's my tip.
That's your top tip then. Yeah, so we kind of covered a lot of ground there, fair to say.
Sorry, mate, I talk a lot.
Well, it's a good podcast where the guest speaks more than and I just get to nod along, which has been really interesting. Yeah, it's been great to chat about the R&D stuff. Really interesting about obviously then that kind of pivoted into the finance stuff in terms of how people can kind of get themselves investment ready and what they need to be looking out for, and it's maybe just been a bit braver in terms of like waiting out on that ideal investor.
Yeah, a bit braver, but think outside the box. Be clever. There's lots of ways of raising, as I said, there's lots of ways of raising money.
Yes.
Don't just do crowdfunding and expect it to come to you. It doesn't work. Crowdfunding is incredibly expensive. It costs a lot, it's incredibly time consuming, and you never raise money doing crowdfunding. The only people who raise money doing crowdfunding are people who have investors already. In other words, if I'm going to raise 100,000, I need to come to the table with 70,000 worth of investors already. Then I might get my 30, and then I might get an over subscription, right? Then that's the only way it really works as a model. A lot of people, and I made this mistake twice, tried to raise money on crowdfunding and expected people to come to me. Why would they?
Yeah.
I'm not Camden Brewery. The other worry with crowdfunding, just to chuck that out there, is overvaluations. It's really easy to get in the habit. They want to push you to really highly value your company at £10 billion or something stupid.
Yeah.
The problem is, sounds great on theory. Companies go, yeah, more or less equity, I got to sell. It's wonderful. It's not wonderful because by getting that valuation, you've told the investors to expect X amount of sales or X amount of something to be able to justify that.
Yeah.
Crowdfunding doesn't last forever. You need a proper round of funding eventually. And you're going to go in and say, my valuation is 10 billion and we've just raised this in crowd and 2 years ago, so now we're worth 20 billion. And the investors will look at you and laugh because they'll go, no, you're not, you made no sales.
Yeah.
You're worth $1 million. And then they'll be like, oh, but we've done all this. But the thing is, now you're going to have to do a down round and undervalue your company ridiculously, meaning you're going to have a whole bunch of really angry shareholders that invested in you at 10 billion, now only worth 1. That ain't going to look good. And that's not a good sign. That doesn't look good on you as a company. And also, there's lots of, if that happened to me and I put a decent amount of money in, I'll be knocking on the FCA's door going, I was missold this investment because it's not worth what they were saying it was worth on this platform. And now it's only worth this, I want my money back.
I think a lot of people would say that that's crowdfunding was like the new idea, but by speaking to you, there's clearly other ways and more adventurous.
Yeah, the crowdfunding is fine. From a marketing point of view, crowdfunding is amazing. If I'm selling a widget and I want to sell lots of that widget, crowdfunding is really good, right? Especially if I can come to the table with money already, because I potentially can get my widget out there to a large market of people who might buy my widget afterwards or talk about my widget, right? Yeah. So it's got some legs. That's why I like, I can't remember what they're called now, Jumpstart, I think, Kickstart. I used to love Kickstarter. I used to recommend it to a lot of people making products because I'll be like, mate, you're doing pre-sales. This is awesome. You're pre-selling a product to the market before you've made it. That's awesome. See, I got all the time in the world for Kickstarter and for things like that, right? Because it is actually helping you make sales and to get started. That is very different from selling equity, but it's got its place. But other things that aren't tapped into, which is never talked about, is startup loan company. So startup loan company is a Westminster backed loan scheme for startups, £25,000 loans. I think you're allowed 1 per director, that may have changed, up to 2. Companies have to be in business less than 3 years. And you cannot be profitable, right? That is and it's PG'd.
Yes.
So that's a really nice way to get a little bit of money for someone trying to start up a small business.
Yeah. Local councils, they got no money anymore, but still worth looking at. Online, there's a wonderful grant calculator that no one knows about. You go to .gov.uk and you put in grant funding calculator, not calculator, search engine. They actually have one. Not always kept up to date, but it is pretty cool, and it will show you some places, and you can put in grants, you can put in equity, and it will have a list and how to contact these people. Slightly suggesting that the government don't want to know that they offer grant funding or something. Well, yeah, that's the other one, but be careful with things like Innovate UK. I only say that because yes, they do give money out, and yes, they're a huge grant funder, but you're going to spend a lot of your time making those applications. You need to have someone who's got their ear on the pulse, their finger on the pulse in Innovate UK to know what they're investing in and why. And that's really important. For instance, now they're so overwhelmed with AI, they're not even looking at it, so they don't even bother. But they still say, we're open for AI submissions. People will spend a very long time now writing those, right? And they won't get anywhere. Putting the models together, and they're very time consuming. I think you got to do like 3-year forecasts if you get the money, if you don't get the money, like all these sort of things. Like it is a massive job, right? And if you've got any Welsh listeners, the same thing with Welsh Deaf Bank money, like any Welsh, because the Welsh government do grants still. So Welsh, any of the sort of Welsh grants and stuff, very similar things. You're going to put a lot of time in where you may not get anything back. You really got to know what they're interested in. Yeah. But don't kick things out. I know, like for instance, in East Anglia, they are still doing EU-backed grants for building manufacturing facilities. You can get 50% paid for by the EU still. There is money left in those pots. So it is worth Googling and finding out. And if people in the regions like we are, there are things to look at. You've got Tyneside down here. Tyneside, what's the one with the mayor's the Conservative? What about the north of Tyne?
Yeah, down there, Middlesbrough area, down there, the tech park and all that. There's grants available down there. You've got the Welsh Development Bank. I I love it. The guy who set up the Welsh Dev Bank used to be called Finance Wales, based in Cardiff for years, so I did lots of business with them. Mm-hmm. And they have a self-sustainable, Wales have a wonderful thing called the DB Bank. It's got hundreds of millions to invest in early stage companies. They're very, very lucky and don't realise how lucky they are. Right, 150k for early stage tech scale ups and extra funding thereafter to build businesses in Wales. It's fantastic. We haven't got that luck, but one of the dreams of the person who started it was to be able to lend money and to help businesses in England, just to rub it in, that Welsh English, competitivism. So we've got this wonderful thing, I think it's called FW Capital. It's in the Northeast. Google them. They're able to invest early stage capital into companies around the Tyne area. And that's funded by the Welsh Government. Thank you very much. And I think
I thought you were going to suggest that we have to move all our businesses to Wales, or...
Well, I used to do quite a bit of that chat with people. There is elements to move your business around based on where some funding may be. But look at local government funding. There is still some stuff available. Northern Powerhouse funding, worth looking into. Just Google it, have a look. I know there's funding here for people in manufacturing in the chemical industry. There's pots of money. There's pots of money for people in the car industry. It is still available in these sort of areas. So look into it. Mm-hmm. If you're these sort of companies that hit those spots, there is money available in alternative areas.
Yeah, so there's a lot of steps to look at. There's an element of looking at debt versus equity.
Yeah, but
what's the best option for you? If you are going to go down the equity route, who's the right investor for you?
Mm-hmm. And if you're going to get debt, what's the best type of debt?
Mm-hmm.
Go to your bank. Go to someone you trust. Go to a broker. Go to your accountant. That's what they pay us to do. We know these things sometimes.
They'll make me blush soon, Brad. God, right, I feel like I've borrowed enough of your time already, but thank you very much for all of your insights. It's been really interesting chatting about this.
I hope it was helpful.
I'm sure.
Sorry if I've talked too much.
Not at all. I'm sure there's plenty to go on to have a part 2 to this, because I feel like there's probably a lot of more stuff we can talk about. But in the meantime, thank you very much for your time. What do you think, guys? Feel free to put down in the comments what you thought about that. Anything else to add? Looking forward to
it was great apart from that Brad.
But yeah, and thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.